Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip,
And I'm CJ.
and it is Friday in the Riv, and I have my official shirt on today, so nobody can comment about I'm dressed. I'm not appropriately dressed for our show. So, yeah, that's it. We have our Spindle City Straight Talk logo shirt on, and we're all ready to go. But I know we got a lot to talk about that ridiculous Herald News article that it's like a merry-go-round. It's spinning so much. It's such political spin. But I got to talk about. I know you've heard another lawsuit has been filed against Fall River PD by Mike Herron,
Yeah.
a former talk show host, and I do know Michael. Uh, he used to go to the boys' club. I know him. And so he's filing a lawsuit. And isn't this amazing? Like, since Coogan's been in, this is like lawsuit land. How many lawsuits were ultimately filed and settled with Malone? We've got all kinds of lawsuits. Now we got another lawsuit. And, the taxpayers have never, ever been given the amount of money that we have spent on lawsuit settlements since he's been in office, or projected settlements too, because we know there were numerous lawsuits in the school department. Malone, Malone is a he had two suits from females, and he had an age discrimination suit. He had the American Disability Act suit. We don't know if they, and we also have a lawsuit pending against the school department. We know with Boomer, that's already gone to court. It's in the process of being adjudicated, and will there be civil cases later on? And I know there were a couple in the wings waiting to be filed. So this is lawsuit land, but just like everything else in Fall River, you don't hear anything from Coogan. It's just shut up, don't talk about it, and they'll forget about it. Well, we're not going to forget about it. We want to know, and we want to know what's happened with these lawsuits, because people love to talk about lawsuit settlements, and we'd like to know really how many we had, how much we've spent of taxpayer money, because you will not hold your department heads accountable. I don't know to this day, and he was on a school committee, how Malone ever could have been hired. Did anybody check his background? He was run out of Swampscott with a pending lawsuit. He was run out of Brockton with a pending lawsuit. And they hire him here, and everybody is amazed. Oh, we got all kinds of lawsuits because this guy is a total basket case. He couldn't run a one-man parade. The only job that he really had for any length of time was a political job. Yeah, that was it. A political job, not actually being a superintendent. When he was a superintendent at Swampscott, they ran him out on a rail, and I happen to know the attorney who litigated it. And he was run out of Brockton. And what does Fall River do? Let's hire him. I mean, look, you're better off hiring an ice house guard to be the head of DCM. Oh, that's right. We did that, didn't we? So, but this thing is just crazy. I just have to comment on a lawsuit. I know that I know it is pending because it's already been revealed. So you're muted, CJ. I can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I said I believe it was filed in May, and I believe they had to do that because it's a 3-year statute of limitations. Yeah. So they wanted to get that filing in under that statute of limitations. The interesting thing about the Malone case was, if you remember, Bruce Assad made a comment in the school committee that said the school department will pay out all settlements on this case. That means the city taxpayer pays it. They're acting like it's coming from a different place.
Well, yeah, that's the irony. They try to. This is the spin they try to put on everything. Oh, it's not the city. No, it's the school department. Well, guess what? Who cuts the school department's check?
That's right.
The city of Fall River. Who pays taxpayers? It's not like Bruce Assad's paying the bill or the school committee's paying the bill. They probably actually should. That's a pretty good idea. You hired that bonehead. You should pay for all
what's interesting is I believe Paul Coogan was on the school committee during the time of vetting Matt Malone. I can't be sure, so don't quote me on it. But even if he wasn't on the school committee when he was vetted and hired, he was the president or the chairman of the school committee, and he was mayor of the city of Fall River, and he worked to cover it up, as we know.
Yeah,
he worked diligently to cover it up, to the point of when people requested that report, they still haven't given us the report, which resulted in him accepting a leave or resigning or getting fired or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And we still haven't heard the settlements on those lawsuits or other lawsuits pending against the city. And, a city council candidate said to me, I think I'm going to make a request from the city of a listing of all pending lawsuits, all settlements under the Coogan administration, and all proposed settlements under the Coogan administration. I think that's an excellent question to ask.
Oh, it is. But try to get a legitimate answer, because nothing in his city, everything's a spin. Because let's face it, like I said, in Coogan land, there are no bullets flying. We don't have a crime problem. Although now he's beginning to say it. He talked about a little bit about it when they talked about ghost guns, and then that'll segue us into our next little thing about that Herald News article, where now it's bizarre what he's trying to take credit for, and it's just nuts. But yeah, you're right. We need this accountability. But our rubber stamped city council, with the exception of Michelle Dionne, will not demand anything. They won't demand it. Even if you send them the numbers. I sent them the healthcare numbers. They didn't read the citizens' input. They all got a copy of the millions of dollars in the last 4 fiscal years that the city has realized in savings on the healthcare. And nobody, except Michelle Dionne, even posed the question, like, what's happened to this money? Where is it? What have you done with it? There's no accountability. And that's the reason that we will be in receivership. I mean, one more term of this guy, we'll be so broke. He'll be gone and we'll be broke, and we'll be going to suffer the consequences. So we need accountability about everything. Lawsuits, money expenditures, which, by the way, everybody on the council is liable. I've got case law about the fiduciary obligation of city councilors to be diligent in their job. Not say, oh, I just go up to Paul's office and ask him if everything, and just take his word for it. No, you're supposed to actually do your work. And I think, if I remember correctly, and I got a fairly good memory, that particular law case, it even put it in quotation marks, that they are bound to cast a critical eye on numbers. They don't even look at them. This budget went through without even looking at the funding sources for the majority of the budget. Talk about irresponsible and malfeasant. They are. All of the above.
No question about it. No question about it. And, if it weren't for Michelle Dionne bringing things up, I don't think people would understand. The people of Fall River wouldn't understand what's actually happening. Some think she's a naysayer. Some people think she asks too many questions. Some people believe that she just is fighting the mayor. She's not fighting the mayor. She's not a naysayer. She's fighting for the people. She's fighting for our tax dollars, which is her right and her responsibility. She has to do that. That's her job. The other 8 city councilors don't know their job. And I'll tell you now, Joe Camara runs a meeting like crap. You can't even tell who's voting what. So much so that I thought that the motion was made to refer the Bank Street Armory to real estate. It wasn't. It was referred to finance. And why was it referred to finance? So it goes from finance to the general agenda so that they can approve it. And it wasn't until Michelle Dionne brought up the fact that $400,000 had been dumped into that building of city taxpayer money that some city councils, not all, but some city councils started asking questions of Michelle about that money because they had no idea. How could you have no idea? You approved the money. You approved the funding.
You're right, but see, therein lies the rub, as the bard said. They don't do their job, and they dismiss it as I don't have to do my job. Well, like I said, you guys better hope that I never hit Powerball or Mega Millions, because you're all going to get sued. I don't have the money to take you to court for every action, which would be virtually at every meeting. But you do have a fiduciary responsibility. It's clear. I sent you the case law, by the way. I know you never read anything we send you. And if you do, you can't understand it. I sent you the case law. And it's from the Cornell Law School. Those cases.
Oh, like that's credible?
And they're cited. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's only an Ivy League school,
Right.
But they have no understanding of fiduciary obligation. They think it's like a joke. It's like, what's a fiduciary obligation? It's a legal obligation. Look it up in a law dictionary. Not Webster's. Webster's will give you a definition, but look it up in the Black's Law Dictionary. What the responsibility of a fiduciary is. You have a legal obligation to spend our money correctly and do your homework. You're liable for that. You are liable. You're being malfeasant if you don't do it. And you never do it, ever. It doesn't matter what you send them. I've sent them and you've sent them volumes of data. Numbers that were 100% accurate. The last set of numbers I sent them for the last 4 fiscal years on the healthcare were from the company that does our healthcare numbers. Dead accurate. They tell the city how much money we're spending and how much money we're saving. Those numbers came right to the Public Employee Committee, the Healthcare Committee. Those numbers are 100% accurate. Did anybody ask a question? No, we don't want to know. You know those 4 monkeys. I see, I don't hear, I don't see, I don't talk, and it's. But that's what you. But you got 7 monkeys, not 4. That's the problem. Your fiduciary responsibility is real. I know that because I went to a national conference for retirement boards, and I sat through a lecture from a law firm who makes billions of dollars suing retirement boards for lack of fiduciary responsibility by the board, just to imprint on us how important it is that everything we do, we have to look at the numbers. When somebody's going to get an early retirement, we have to look at the cost. Even if we're granting it, we have to know the cost. We have to get the projected impact on the system. Because that's our job. You people stick your hand up and swear an oath that you ignore every single time you walk into that chamber, with the exception of one individual. And that's a sad commentary. So the moral of that sad story is, you people, get out there and vote. The only person on that council right now that's doing her job, and that's her job, as CJ said. She's not a naysayer. She's not doing it just to bust the mayor's chops. She's doing it because it's her fiduciary responsibility as a city councilor, as the legislative arm, the fiduciary of the city, the people who hold the purse strings of this city, to make sure that that money is spent properly. So just to remind you again, in case you get your little crayon out and write Black's Law Dictionary and look up the definition of a fiduciary and what fiduciary responsibility is. But I know all I'm doing is shoveling shit against the tide, talking to them. But I still got to say it because it's a fact.
It's sad that we present this information to the city council and we're ignored. They wonder why people have stopped going to citizens input, because they're ignored. And unless they're showing up with 1,000 kids or 1,000 veterans, they're ignored. And that's the sad part about it.
Yeah.
Your voice isn't heard unless you come in with 1,000 children or 1,000 veterans or 1,000 seniors to make a scene. Why? Because seniors vote. And children, you have to give children everything because it's just the only way to do it. Or, better yet, show up with the entire fire department. Show up with the entire police department. And get what you want. Because that's how it works. Because the city council is more concerned with appearances than their actual job. For instance, I'm not saying the police department doesn't deserve the money they got in their contract, but the city council didn't review it. One person did. We know that Michelle did. I think Sean Kadim even asked the question of how's it being funded, and what was the answer, Chip?
Well, we've got some investments down the road we're looking at.
Right.
Like
that's
scratch
like the
tickets.
Powerball.
That was an ad lib, but
yeah, that's like the Powerball ticket I bought the other day.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I found out that California won.
Yeah,
makes me laugh.
But it's crazy, and we started out this lawsuit, but we segued into some important issues. So let's segue in, because you talked about it, about spinology, because that Herald News article now. Paul now, isn't it amazing? It's an election time. Now he actually will almost admit that we have a little issue with crime. And now he's the affordable housing king. The guy who said at the Flint Neighborhood Association meeting that fundamentally, look, we're only looking at market rate housing. The man who said, you're right, some people will be displaced. A lot of people will be displaced. The man who said high rents in the long run will be good for the city. I don't know what city he's looking at, but it's good to displace poor people, which is his economic development plan, to just throw out all the poor people and replace them with rich people. But that ain't happening, because the rich people aren't going to come down here with the crime rate and the educational system the way it is. But this is the spin. Now, the guy who said on the record talks about 3 units, 4 units. We're building maybe 40 units. What did he say? 23 to 40. We're going to end up with 40 units or so. Now, all of a sudden, we got hundreds of them. We got the other shill, the other propagandist. Now, I'd like to find out, what those apartments really are, if they're public workforce housing, whatever, because the numbers in the Herald News article and his comments, he's lying through his teeth, people. We've got audio, we've got video, we've got people who went to neighborhood meetings and saw him blow off affordable housing. He's never made that a priority, but now he knows it's an election year and there are a lot of pissed off people because the rents, we're paying Newton rents to live in Fall River. So,
well, guess who wrote that article?
Yeah.
Take a shot
His chief propagandist.
Yes, exactly. It was written by Joe Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was written by Joe Good. Now, here's what the mayor claimed. Okay. All right, let's see. Mayor Paul Coogan called the development of properties very important to the city. Yeah, market rate development, including partnering with organizations and developers for neighborhood redevelopment. And I can tell you that the residents really appreciate it. I have yet to meet a resident in the city of Fall River who appreciates Paul's redevelopment of neighborhoods because it's all been market rate development. Now, he says, Coogan said that the residents really appreciate it during a visit to the tenants on Murray Street. I used to live on Murray Street.
Yeah, but did you notice something, CJ? You notice how she danced around the word affordable housing.
Right.
She talks about development. She talks about his strategy. Well, I'm going to tell you what, Paul. Why don't you walk up to the Flint and tell all the people whose food pantry you're taking away from them and who are pissed off about it, that your plan for the Flint, taking over buildings, taking over the Duval School, getting rid of their food pantry is a good idea. And all of those people, that's a low-income area, they're not happy about your plan. And I don't care how Joe Good tries to spin it, but she's very careful. She wasn't careful when she sent BCC the letter that said he's going to consider not funding.
Right.
Because, that was a screw up. Because we got it in writing, and when we finally sue BCC, when this thing that's going to last mysteriously till the campaign season is over, we will find that First Amendment rights sacrosanct. But Paul Coogan has been on record numerous times, but all those articles are framed very, very clearly. What you read never really said. Paul Coogan has a massive commitment to affordable housing. We've built zillions of these things. Well, now they're gonna consider this, that, and the other, and then you got that other shill that'll say anything to keep his job. Yammering about stuff and how much money they've invested into what. Yeah. Well, how about the $392,000 we invested into the Bank Street Armory? And how about the mysterious line item for another $400,000 to be invested? Where's that coming from? More CPA money? Because I guess what? If he gets that $400,000, that'll be nearly $1 million we've dumped into that place with no return for the taxpayers and the citizens of Fall River.
And that doesn't include the 8-point-some-odd million dollars that he's getting to redevelop the property. His out-of-pocket cost is $5 million.
Yep. Well, that's a pretty good deal, CJ. If you and I had $5 million, we ought to do that, because you know something. If I can find a city that will give me $10 for every $5 I give them, I'll just keep giving them $5 bills, and I'll never run out. And I'm going to get real rich in the process.
Well, here's one of the interesting things. Here's one of the interesting things that Mike Dionne has said. To date, with current and pending affordable housing projects, CDA has been a financial partner to produce 520 units for lower income individuals and families. Where are these units? I want the addresses. I want the property owners. I want to know if they're part of market rate housing. I want to know if they're part of the senior complexes that were made on Olden Street. I want to know exactly where these units are, because guess what? Nobody knows where they are, and nobody can figure out how to get them. And this is
Yeah,
the
you're
problem.
right. But let's look at the numbers, CJ. He's talking about 500,000, 545,000, or whatever. Investment. Really? Doesn't this guy at the Armory want 400,000
Right.
to develop a few units? So 500,000 isn't a lot of money to invest when you look at what these people are getting. Listen, Paul Coogan said, and we got the audio, and we got videos, and we got witnesses, that we had, I think, 23 units at the time so far. We projected 40 by the end of the year. At that rate, 40 a year, 500 and some units. What did that take? 20 years, 15, 18 years to develop it? Like you said, I want to see where all this was invested. Just like the money in the roof, magic money. We've invested magic money. I want to see with whom and where that 500 grand was given out. Because I can tell you what, I'm sure we'll know a lot of the names.
Of course we will. Of course we will, because they're always the same people. Okay? And I don't have a problem with people wanting to buy buildings. Okay? And if they want to buy the Bank Street Armory and destroy the history of Fall River, and that's what they're going to do, okay? That's fine. Destroy the history of Fall River. Okay? The Preservation Society, I can't give any support to. And the reason why I can't give any support to them is because they allow for these projects to go forward to destroy what the people of Fall River want. They don't want market rate housing in the Bank Street Armory. They want an amusement and entertainment center. Whether that be a gymnasium, whether that be a boxing ring, whether that be a karate studio, that's what they want. If they want to watch wrestling there, they want to be able to do it. There's no parking down there as it is. And he's not going to tell me that the old post office parking garage is going to provide enough parking for those 3 buildings that he's converted, that he wants to, well, 2 he's already converted and 1 he wants to convert. It's not going to fly. Okay? I may have been born at night, but it wasn't last night.
No, you're right, CJ, but you left out one little caveat too. They're not only destroying the history by doing what they're doing and ignoring the people, but they're protecting a couple of their friends, aren't they?
That's it. That's it.
We can't do that. We can't keep the Armory and its history.
Well,
we have to protect our little pal.
Right.
Our pal whose daddy was a mentor for us. We can't do that. We have to do that. And the Armory does have, like I said, it's got, I played ball down there when I was a kid, and a lot of people did. And I think both Mike and Chris Heron probably played down there at some point in time. But also, talking about it, it brought back a little memory. I'm sure some people, but few, will know who Freddie Roach is. Well, Freddie Roach is a very, very famous boxing trainer. He trained Manny Pacquiao, many other fighters. And a lot of people don't know that Freddie Roach fought his last professional fight at the Bank Street Armory. So there's another little piece of history. Plus, he had wrestling matches, and they used to have judo programs for the kids. They had other programs for the kids in the Bank Street Armory. That armory has contributed a lot to this community, and it is a disgrace that it's being sold off to these developers who have no interest in Fall River or its history. They're only looking at their pocketbooks.
We got a couple of comments in. Not happy at all. And then the second one says, sadly, I don't expect the truth to be told. except by a small group of us. Can't wait to follow the money trail of donors. And what do we always say?
Very well said. Very well said. Absolutely. And you know, the thing is, like I said, it's contribution to this community is just immeasurable. I mean, that building not only started off obviously as an armory, but like I said, it housed so many programs. It did so much for this community. It's just it's a disgrace. Like I said, I went to see Freddie Roach because I've always been involved in boxing and stuff and martial arts and things like that. So I went down there to watch Roach fight. We had a few local people on that undercard, and it was a good night out there. And they had I don't know what I may use the wrong one, but because I'm not really into like professional wrestling, but I'm into college wrestling, but not pro wrestling. But they had wrestling shows down there and stuff. It's been an integral part of this community for a long, long time. And it's just sad. They just sell everything off. They don't care about what it is. And, shame on the Historical Society for not fighting this tooth and nail.
I agree. And you know what? This is what you get when you elect people like Paul into office. You get nothing but crap. And I'm going to give you a quote from the ARPA meeting as reported by Christopher Peckham when questioned about the use of the ARPA funds. Quote from Chris Peckham as he paraphrased or stated what Ken Fiola said: "We will spend the money and let the government come after us afterwards to get it back."
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, he knows the government's far too busy to come after a little bird like Fall River who's spending chump change for the trillions they're spending. They never hold anybody accountable. We left billions of dollars worth of military equipment in Afghanistan and 13 dead military personnel, which is one of the greatest black marks in the history of the United States of America. Our government doesn't care about money because it's not their money. Every one of those people, the 545, they're all rich. You get into Congress, it's your ticket to become a millionaire. You stay there a couple terms and you will be one of the chosen few. And that's the disgrace. That's why we have to do what we're supposed to do. That's get to the polls. Let's send a message like was sent in 1995 when they bounced 5 councilors.
I'd like to bounce 8 councilors at the next election.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree. But the reality is there are more of us than there are of them. That's the irony of the thing. They've always managed to manipulate the majority and say, shut up, be quiet. We know better than you. We're smart. You're not. You just shut up. You can't do anything about it because we control everything. But that's not true. If we go to the polls, they control nothing because there are thousands of us and only a few of them. We go to the polls, we cannot have 10,000 people like the last 2 elections that Coogan ran in. We cannot have 10,000 people, 8,000 of whom Coogan's given a job to. I'm being facetious, so don't call me up today, Paulie, and tell me I only gave 7,998 jobs. No, we all know. I'm using a little literary license here. But the reality is that we can't have the government of this city being controlled by people who are there because they're voting for their own self-interest because they're political ticks. There are enough political ticks when you have a low turnout like that to swing an election. We proved that with the recall. We had the highest turnout in I don't know how long, and that was an election that was standing on itself. It had no city council, had no that state or federal election on the ballot. It was just that one thing, and we turned out nearly 17,000 people
9 days before Christmas.
9 days before Christmas in the winter. So we can do it. We can do it. But all we've got to do is exercise the greatest power that the Constitution has given us, the right to shape our own government.
Well, and with that, we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. Have a great weekend and enjoy yourself and support your beautiful weekend out there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Monday.